His life and times are now a part of our history, but bringing him to life again is sculptor Tanya Bartlett, who's carving a Don of her own. This life-size realistic Don is a plasticine model for what will be a bronze statue that's been commissioned for the Sir Donald Bradman Museum at Bowral.
We wanted him young, but not too young. We wanted him how people remembered him. Getting him around in his early 30s was the aim.
Using the Don's real pads, shoes and cap, Tanya has gone to great lengths to maintain accuracy and extraordinary detail.
It gets very difficult doing a sculpture of someone's face when they're smiling because, you know, the lines appear, but then you've got to balance that with not making him seem too old, and getting a humble smile on his face was sort of what we wanted.
And while this detailed sculpture behind me looks finished, Tanya has months of work ahead of her. The model now has to be cast in plaster and wax and even rubber before it's finally set in bronze, before its unveiling in Bowral in February. Matt Carden, NBN News.
For 75-year-old stroke survivor Laurie Harris and his neighbour Jim Lyons, the daily ritual of checking the mailbox can be a time-consuming and sometimes painful half-marathon.
Many times you can go over there and I'm buggered when I get back. See, I can't even get home and have a fight with my wife. I've got no strength left.
For the past 3 years, residents have lobbied the Department of Housing to have the boxes moved closer to their homes. The department told them recently it was too expensive to move the letterboxes 50 metres up the lane.
Bad luck, unfortunately, it's been knocked back, and the best of luck. And I thought that was a callous attitude, and I was bloody incensed, to tell you the truth, because these people have paid their taxes all their lives.
The department's quote was $1,500, but the most expensive private quote obtained by the residents from 3 licensed builders was $250.
Postal Department has agreed to, they will deliver the mail down. There's no problem in that respect. So I can't understand their refusal to do something about it.
And this is a government department, and this is the attitude of the government to the people. And I think it's a disgrace.
This story is almost over, and Laurie and Jim still aren't back from checking their mail.
Well, just help us, please, that's all I can say. Because you can see how well I can walk, and Jim, we're just about buggered.
But late this afternoon, a backflip. The Department of Housing responded to NBN's inquiries by saying the boxes will now be moved as soon as possible. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Passengers on board this seaplane from Sydney's Rose Bay only had to wait a little over 20 minutes before emerging over Newcastle's coastline this afternoon. From there it was a smooth landing to shore, the sight attracting an impromptu and pleased crowd of locals. And naturally, the new operators of the charter service are hoping the flights will take off.
As far as the regularity is concerned, it really depends on the demand here out of the Hunter and the level of support we have for it.
The service replaces the previous operation by Sydney Harbour Seaplanes, now in administration after the Civil Aviation Safety Authority suspended its licence 12 months ago. The new $3.6 million amphibious aircraft, which seats up to 14 passengers, provides charter flights from Sydney to the Hunter, Wollongong and Canberra. A return flight from Sydney is approximately $350. Coastal Air Services will begin regular flights in a fortnight. Helen Kapelos, NBN News.
Around 3:30 this morning, the driver of this Subaru lost control on a bend and slammed into a parked four-wheel drive. The impact sent the vehicle into a power pole, bringing down power lines in the area. The 20-year-old male passenger died at the scene.
The impact was sustained mainly on the passenger side. The driver was taken to hospital. He was x-rayed and then released into the custody of police.
This morning, police charged the man, a university student from Kenya, with dangerous and negligent driving causing death. Meanwhile, it was a lucky escape for an elderly couple at Caves Beach yesterday after their vehicle, which they were taking for a test drive, crashed into a yacht. The pair were treated at the scene for minor injuries.
It could have been very, very tragic, bearing in mind the size of the yacht, which is about 15 metres, its weight and also its proximity to electricity wires.
While the owner of the yacht was away for the weekend, neighbours say it's been under construction since 1983. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News. The pressurised pump at Valentine burst yesterday morning, spilling sewage into nearby grassland, Shepherds Creek and Lake Macquarie. It was a resident who alerted authorities, which then quickly began shutting down local pump stations. 8 tankers were brought in to suck out the sewage. The crews from Hunter Water worked into the night to repair the pipe. The Environment Protection Authority was notified.
Another concern is the level of contamination within the lake in terms of swimming. So we put up signs to keep people away from that part of the lake, so they don't swim in there.
Water samples have been taken. They're being tested to determine the extent of contamination.
For this sort of break, it would normally take about 2 days for the levels to drop right back to normal.
Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
Empty nesters are abandoning the suburbs and moving into the city centre in droves, lured by the cosmopolitan lifestyle.
That only 5% of us will end up in nursing homes, and sadly, of those 5% who end up, half of them will dead within 6 months. But for most people, old age can be a rewarding and enormously vigorous time in their lives.
Urban strategist Penelope Coombs says planners must ensure the needs of mature CBD dwellers aren't ignored. It's argued that while the city has plenty of hotels and nightclubs, there needs to be a greater diversity of venues such as jazz clubs and more entertainment along the lines of this Saturday night's opera to be staged here in King Edward Park. Council says its plan for a civic cultural precinct embodies that philosophy.
Make spaces available for theatrical, entertainment, performing arts. It's about vibrancy, colour, movement and life. That's what we want in this precinct.
Their ideas shared among 170 professionals attending an urban design summit in Newcastle today. Guest speaker, journalist Philip Adams, says Newcastle has geographically been blessed.
It's physically dramatic with its ups and downs. Not quite San Francisco, but so much more interesting than a hillless city like Melbourne.
Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
This morning there were 16 schools left in the fight for state CHS honours. This afternoon there was 8, and by tonight just 4 remain. With Terrigal to line up against Kira in the girls, the showdown in the boys is also set to be a tough one. On its home court, Newcastle proved hard to beat today, sweeping aside Caringbah and then West Wyalong in the quarters and semi-final respectively. Elijah Sulai was a standout for Newcastle, hitting 22 points in the morning before backing up with a 16-point effort in the semi. Fellow state ret Adam Stanger was never far from the action either, but the whole side will have to be on song against Westfield Sports High School. The Sydney-based powerhouse has won this division twice and looked an ominous sight again today, winning its 2 games comfortably.
Westfield Sports were hunting for a third state title at Broadmeadow Basketball Stadium, but it was always going to be tough in front of a partisan Newcastle crowd. Little separated the teams early before the home side broke away, courtesy of Alex Best, to lead 22-14 at the end of the opening quarter. The Red and Blues maintained the pace for the remainder of the game, eventually winning 88 points to 60. Adam Stanger and Luke Woodman sharing the Most Valuable Player award. In the girls' final, Kira looked to have had the match sewn up midway through the third, but a 6-point run by Terrigal narrowed the gap to 10. The momentum then continued into the final quarter, with the Central Coast side at one stage pegging the margin back to 3. Kira, though, steadied itself to win 69-65.
The report, commissioned by the Motor Accident Authority, found that drug use, excessive speeding and unregulated work hours are rife in the trucking industry.
At the moment, there is a widespread appeal to people's dark side because people's very living depends on perhaps bending the rules or breaking them outright. They'll be more inclined to do it. There's incentives and motivations to do that.
Special Minister of State John Delabosca will establish a task force to implement safety reforms. The Minister also plans to introduce breakthrough legislation that would hold corporations who contract truck drivers liable if they crash while delivering their goods. Company management could even face jail time. It's argued companies set unrealistic schedules and often push drivers to the brink.
If you don't carry this load at this time, you won't get any more work from us. And with the individual owner or operator that may have a truck, maybe a couple of payments behind, might have his wife pressuring because there's no housekeeping money, they will generally do things to look after their family.
A truck driver who also owns a transport company, David True, says fatalities could be reduced by educating car drivers.
And we often see them on the freeway travelling at 120 kilometres an hour in cars that probably were only ever meant for the city and in the hands of drivers who probably spend 99% of their lives in the city at 50 k's bumper to bumper, and they get out on the freeway at 120 and they're still bumper to bumper and without the skills to handle it.
Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
Unfortunately for rescue crews, scenes like this one at Fraser Park have been revisited many times over the years. And last Saturday was no exception, as a similar drama was played out at the popular Central Coast rock fishing destination when two male swimmers trapped in the blowhole had to be winched to safety.
I guess required a fair bit of coordination between the services to extract the guys.
The men were treated for shock and minor injuries, passing on thanks to their rescuers at the scene. One of those who performed the winch operation was Westpac Rescue Airman Steve Johnston, who says scenes like these can easily be prevented.
While you can get in there, you've always got to look for a way out, and they should be aware of the rising tide, and conditions do change in the sea. Let people know where you're going, and generally just be safe.
Rescue crews say the coming months mark the most dangerous period for holidaymakers who need to exercise caution around all risky areas. Helen Kapelos, NBN News.
Robin Hickey, Leanne Goodall and Amanda Robinson vanished within 4 months of each other in the late 70s. Jim and Mary Hickey, the parents of Robin Hickey, a dental nurse who was last seen at a Belmont bus stop on the Pacific Highway in April 1979, were the first to give evidence at today's inquiry.
Probably hopeful that sooner or later, perhaps sooner, that a solution will be arrived at and we can put it all behind us eventually.
The couple testified their daughter had no reason to disappear and took no clothes or money. They said police acted like Robin was a runaway, took no statements and even lost her mouth cast taken for possible identification. Jim Hickey told the inquiry he believed an anonymous man who made a phone call to his wife 4 days after Robin disappeared could have been responsible for her possible death. He says the mystery caller knew private family details. He said he knew things about us that only Robin could have told him. This person knew the pet name of our show dog was Jeremy, and he commented upon the fact that this dog was one of Robin's particular favourites. The Hickeys' former next-door neighbour, a psychiatric patient called Jeffrey Armstrong, has been identified as a person of interest in her disappearance. The inquiry continues. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
The Oasis shopping centre is in urgent need of an overhaul. The empty shops sit stagnant and business has dwindled ever since the opening of the Glendale Supercentre. But now things are looking up for the retailers.
Well, we're actually over the moon. It's been a year of blood, sweat and tears, and finally from last night everything's go ahead. So from next week we'll actually be underway.
Plans were first lodged with Council in April and were then approved, but the developers came back with an improved application which finally went through last night.
The revised plan is a lot better urban design outcome, a lot of specialty shops, increased parking, good accessibility.
Developers say construction will take about 10 months and once complete will not only include a Coles supermarket but also 35 specialty stores and a medical centre. Retailers are hoping to give Glendale a run for its money, attracting shoppers from the new subdivisions of North Lakes and Cameron Park.
We used to do very well with the old jewel store, and I think it'll be back to the way it was and even better. It's 100% better designed shopping centre, and yeah, it'll be good for the locals.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
The study, which has been underway since January, follows the death of a camper who was crushed by a falling melaleuca tree on Boxing Day last year. Many campsites have remained closed since the accident, but with the busy holiday season on the way, temporary campsites have provided a good solution. The big question, though, is will tourists be able to claim a spot by the water?
There will be some lakeshore camping available, but there will be a reduction in the amount of lakeshore camping this year.
Local businesses rely on the Christmas influx to sustain them through quiet times. They'd have preferred that all areas be open.
I think the businesses in the surrounding areas are very keen to see it all open, as are the campers and various other users of the park.
But Brian Gilligan says there are more factors to consider.
It's about striking a balance between looking after the park and looking after the needs of visitors and in particular their safety.
They're hoping that the final risk assessment study will be finished within 6 to 12 months, which should see almost all of the closed campsites reopened. Signs will be posted throughout the park to identify safe camping areas, and National Parks and Wildlife Services are asking people to limit the size of their campsite to allow for maximum visitor usage. What started as a hobby 17.5 years ago has turned into something of an obsession for Kevin Hodges. But 3 weeks ago, an out-of-control car came crashing into his boat. It was just 6 months from completion.
Well, it's just one of those things. It can be repaired, and it's just that people weren't injured. That was the main concern.
The setback may have thrown his schedule out by a couple of months, but his passion for the project hasn't wavered. If anything, it's made him more determined.
I've had a lot of knockers, said, oh, you'll never finish the boat, but I'm determined to finish it now, unless I die in the meantime. But it'll go in the water. That's my ambition, to live on board it, and that's what I'm going to do.
With the car firmly stuck under the boat's rudder, it took a crane to lift the boat so the car could be removed. Fueled by the passion that's driven him for the past 17 years, it won't be long now until Kevin's dream is realised and the boat moves from the front yard to the ocean. And while he hasn't yet got to see it sail, today at least he saw it fly. Rochelle Reardon, NBN News.
The students from schools near Newcastle are the first group to complete the HSC aviation subject and receive their private pilot's licence at a time when others their own age are still learning to drive. And while their school friends remained in classrooms on the ground, they had the fun of taking their lessons high in the sky.
They all run outside. They tell us about how they run outside and have a look at the aeroplanes flying over and wonder if it's us.
It took the teenagers 2 years to complete, and now they're able to fly solo just about anywhere they want.
Been to Sydney a couple of times, to Bankstown, out to Dubbo on a solo nav, and that was a lot of excitement. 4 hours on my own, all the way out there and back.
Their training also included study of commercial subjects, which they passed with flying colours.
In the theory exam for the commercial licence, the whole class were able to pass that exam that's set by the authorities in Canberra, and they passed that first time, the whole class, which is something that not even the professional programs have been able to do recently.
And what will become of these pilots? Well, anything that involves flying.
I'm planning to do an outdoor recreation course next year, and I'm hoping to be able to use flying and outdoor recreation as a combination to run a business where I can take people out to the bush and do stuff out there.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
New South Wales won the toss and elected to bat, but were quickly trying to make up lost ground after losing 3 wickets in the first hour of play. While he spent 9 hours batting yesterday and produced a double century, Jason Krazier was struggling when he teamed up with Steve Carrum today. His time at the crease quickly came to an end just before lunch when a ball by Queenslander Chris McCabe was caught by Julian Nelson. The Blues went to lunch at a disappointing 4 for 57, hoping their form would improve. When they returned to the field, things started to turn around, thanks to a fighting 37 from Brad Roworth. Late this afternoon, a solid partnership from Daniel Christian and James Allsop put New South Wales into a stronger position with their work cut out tomorrow. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
Starting the day at 8 for 210, James Allsop and Daniel Christian had already done a good job of rescuing the baby Blues, but their job was far from done. With a little bit of good luck and good management, the pair continued to hold out. Christian moved into the 60s as the duo doggedly kept Queensland at bay for the first hour, but on a hot one, it was only right that summer broke through for the visitors. In his first over of the day, Chris Summers took 2 wickets, ending New South Wales' innings at 242. Queensland's run chase didn't start well, Aaron Bird sending Nick Kruger back in the 3rd over. Runs were coming freely, but skipper Craig Phillipson only grabbed a handful, forced to watch his teammates do the work from the stands after edging Adam Fleming. Moving on to 93, the Queenslanders' middle order fell away. When skipper Jarrod Burke removed Murray Bragg, it was 7 for 142. No salvation for Nathan Remington, even though he was caught by Christian. Queensland well and truly on the ropes. Things didn't get any better when Luke Davis was run out, the visitors needing 40 runs off the final 16 overs. It was only fitting that Daniel Christian claimed the final wicket after his match-saving innings with the bat. It started a night of celebration. The Australian team for the Youth World Cup will be announced tonight. Last month, few amateur golfers, let alone pros, knew the name James Nitties. His performance at the Australian Open changed all that. In good company, he finished the top amateur after sitting equal 6th overall at one stage.
It was the best experience that I've ever had in my golfing career. Playing with the pros, you know, just being out there inside the ropes instead of actually walking around watching the tournament and actually sort of performing okay.
While it's obviously his goal, the level-headed teenager isn't getting carried away with professional aspirations just yet.
A lot of people said they want me to turn pro a lot earlier, like the Aaron Badleys and a lot of that Nathan Greens did and that, but I'm just going to stay with being amateur a bit more and take it a bit slower.
Next year will be anything but. While waiting for a possible second term at the AIS, the 19-year-old will represent New South Wales in New Zealand before tackling the Lake Macquarie International and a host of other tournaments.
The Beresfield Driver Reviver at the end of the F3 has become a familiar sight to motorists since moving there in 1994. It now hosts 85,000 visitors a year. Today, Christy Wright from Canberra became number 500,000.
I think it's good time for people to get out, stretch their legs, have a cup of coffee if they feel like it. After travelling for so many hours, it's good to rest.
The first day of Operation Safe Arrival was a relatively smooth one, with the number of road users noticeably on the rise.
The traffic is starting to build up, particularly on the F3 freeway early this afternoon, and we do anticipate a lot of traffic, particularly heading up towards Karua, going up the north coast.
Holiday traffic arrangements are now in place at Karua, including a new northbound lane and the now customary fence which prevents motorists from turning right. But with everything ready for the Christmas break, those closest to the road safety push simply hope drivers now heed some traditional messages.
Stop, revive, survive, slow down, call in, stop on the side of the road.
Don't speed, for heaven's sake, you will get caught, and also don't drink and drive.
The Country Challenge Cup concept has attracted great support from clubs across the state. And why not? With $20,000 going to the winning club alone, 52 club sides have nominated to play in the popular pre-season championship. However, Newcastle has just the sole representative in Lakes United.
One would have thought would have been a bit of a carrot to dangle, but as I said, we've only got the one, and I'm sure Lakes will go very well.
It's not that more Newcastle clubs don't want to play, it's just that the local competition kicks off only weeks after the first Challenge Cup match.
The Country Challenge Cup is a great concept for country rugby league, but here in Newcastle, with our competition out of all the country groups and divisions, we start a lot earlier, so it makes it a lot harder for our teams to go in it.
The Newcastle League's main focus in the new year will be preparations for the Knights Penrith Panthers trial match that it will host at Cessnock on the 2nd of March.
It didn't matter where you took in the carols by candlelight last night because the scenic lakeside location of Spears Point Park offered plenty of breathtaking vantage points, and it was obvious the festive atmosphere caught on in no time. As always, the young were mesmerised by the setting, the annual tradition, a moving occasion for all those present. And of course it was music to the ears of the more than 30,000 people who attended. The entertainment lineup also included an appearance from the popular Louise Anton. And to prove the event catered for everyone, the adrenaline junkies weren't left out. Whatever the pace, it was clear the night was rated an overwhelming success by all. Helen Kapelos, NBN News. If you were bussing it in Newcastle today, there was one trip which would have proved unforgettable. Bus driver Margaret Pennell made sure her passengers took in the lighter side of the festive season, whether it was singing along with the carols or just admiring the scenery. One thing for sure, the point of the silly season got across. Judging by the crowds, a popular destination charted by many would have been the shopping centre, as people were caught up in the rush for buying last-minute presents. How are you going with the Christmas shopping?
Oh, not too good. I've still got a bit to go. A bit behind time.
Others, though, had it almost wrapped up.
I'm going very well. I got mine all done. Just pick up a few things today and finished.
Good. Yeah, last one. Got it right here.
The Santa photo call drew mixed responses from some, while the occasion proved a bit much for some parents. Others, though, escaped the scene altogether, the sweltering heat drawing hundreds to the beach. At 2 this afternoon, the Hunter Valley was the hottest location in the state, with a top temperature of 38 degrees. Helen Kapelos, NBN News. There was a ceremonious start to Christmas for many this morning, with churchgoers taking time out to indulge in the spiritual meaning of the day. Parishioners attended services at Newcastle's Christchurch Cathedral and Sacred Heart Catholic Church, whose congregation united for a big turnout. The morning was also reserved for gift giving, with children everywhere awaiting the much-anticipated arrival of Santa, his choice of presents proving popular with the youngsters in this household. And of course, as many of us sat down to a midday feast, there were those that instead volunteered their time to provide for those in need for a Christmas lunch in Newcastle Civic Park. Entertainers providing a musical backdrop to the annual Mission Australia event. And some families received the most beautiful gift of all, Judith and Terry Glue welcoming one of the state's first Christmas babies into the world.
That's a bit of a treat, yeah.
Weighing in at £6.6 or 2.9 kilos, the little girl was delivered into her mum's arms just after 7:30 this morning. It's just one more reason for the family to celebrate that little bit harder on Christmas Day. Her little brother's birthday falls on Christmas Eve.
More than 20,000 hectares inside the Wollombi National Park has gone up in smoke since Friday. For the first time, properties are now under threat. So far, only 3 children at an isolated homestead have been evacuated. For most residents, the fires have more so been an inconvenience.
Yeah, mate, the Putty Road's closed at the moment.
The fire is tonight 9 kilometres west of Bulga. It's expected to be fanned by strong winds late tomorrow.
That would put the township of Bulga under threat. We believe that we'll be resourced well enough to be able to hold the fire around the base of the escarpment, but when a fire comes out in such a large front, it's always very difficult to control.
At the National Parks and Wildlife Fire Control Centre, staff are preparing for the worst, but believe they can keep Bulga's 300 residents and businesses safe. It's reassuring news for Danny Dregovic, who owns a service station which sits directly in the fire's path.
We've got our sprinklers set up and all the pumps ready. I mean, we keep the place pretty clean, just to make sure. The only problem we might have are the trees out the back.
Resources are stretched to the limit because of Sydney's fire disaster. Reinforcements are on the way. More than 60 personnel from Victoria's National Park and Wildlife Service will fly into Cessnock tonight. Their rescue trucks are being driven to Bulga overnight, where crews will be deployed first thing in the morning. The bushfire, which was deliberately lit, is expected to keep burning for another week.
Each year, a staggering 1.5 million tourists visit the Lower Hunter vineyards. Now a $2 million wine centre featuring a tourist information outlet has opened, ready to capitalise on this holiday tourist trade.
It's in a prime location. It's in perhaps the centre of Hunter Valley wine country. People can visit it. We believe there'll be more numbers visiting the centre, and once they visit the centre, they can find out where to visit elsewhere within the Hunter Valley wine country.
A wine interpretive centre, also set to be housed in the building, will open in June, making the facility a one-stop shop for tourists. The vineyards are drawing visitors not so keen on the beach. Wineries are packed with tourists keen to sample the region's best drops.
It's basically day trippers, although over the past few days the tourist office here have been receiving some inquiries from Sydney-siders and Newcastle people with short stays.
And once again, the Hunter Valley is managing to lure overseas tourists.
International visitors have been very, very strong the past 12 to 18 months. We've noticed numbers have been climbing.
Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
Thick flames of smoke engulfed the bushland south of Curry this afternoon, surrounding tea tree plants, only adding fuel to the fire. Firefighters from 36 units are battling the blaze. 2 helicopters were also called in to carry out water bombing. At the nearby township of Pellormain, residents watched on in horror, worried the winds could change. Minister for Gaming and Racing Richard Face and Cessnock Mayor John Clarence, who were visiting the area, suddenly had a first-hand role to play in the fires.
Myself and the Mayor having a look at the fires, saw the young person going away from the scene.
The two men then contacted police and waited with the teenager, who's from nearby Western, until they arrived.
We've apprehended a 16-year-old youth who's been conveyed to the Maitland Police Station to help us in our inquiries.
Several roads remain closed in the area, including Freeman's Drive between Pellolmain and Mount Vincent. Further west and in the upper Hunter town of Bulga, strong winds have forced the evacuation of around 7 properties in the Glenroy estate 15 kilometres south of the town. The fire has broken through all containment lines and the Putty Road is now closed. At Spencer on the Central Coast, firefighters are waiting to see what the weather will do this evening before beginning another back-burning operation. Further north to Kulnurra, a fire which was threatening nearby properties has since been contained. Meanwhile, a fire has broken out tonight in the Pilliga forest west of Narrabri. Firefighters at the scene say the blaze is spreading quickly. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News, late edition.
Hodges, Carrick tags the back of Roberts and ends up right.
Both cars now beginning to swamp the number 9 Komatsu, and it is not operated of the 9 car of Pye, but he has the experience. And on the inside, Bernie Roberts with 2 to go gets by John Pine. Steel Summer Series here at Newcastle. Bernie Roberts hanging on to the lead. Robert Carrick is there also as they go to the wire. Pine gets through for second. Carrick survives in third. But the race win in round 5.
It's not until you take a close look at the Talara lagoon that the problem becomes visible. Toxic blue-green algae is choking the shores.
The toxicity of the algae is certainly something that we're concerned about, and hence we've issued some warnings in the press and certainly signage up today.
Residents are being warned not to come into contact with the water or allow their pets near the lagoon. Fishing is also restricted. Having recently acquired the wetlands site, Maitland Council now has big plans for the lagoon. A plan of management is on exhibition and the public is being urged to submit suggestions.
In one suggestion, put a man-made island here where the wildlife can have habitat, of course, safe habitat. We want to look at removing the carp by means of fishing competition.
Council will continue to monitor the levels of blue-green algae in the lagoon. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
Newcastle's skate line roller rink has operated successfully in the region for 3 decades, but operators were forced to put the business up for sale last month when annual public indemnity insurance premiums jumped from $8,000 to $87,000.
We wanted to hang on to it, but at the moment we just don't have that kind of profit. So we've decided to actually sell the building.
The region's only roller skating and blading facility will close its doors permanently on the 13th of January.
We're not the only company that has found this problem. I think you will find down the track a lot of family entertainment centres will close down, and it is a shame because the kids in the future won't have anything to do.
Britt Osborne, the operator of Williamtown's Tomtyland Fun Park, agrees. She says spiralling insurance costs will eventually drive all leisure operators out of business.
If it's going to go up anymore, of course it would be detrimental to the park, and we'll have to start laying staff off and take out fun rides.
The insurance crisis has meant just that for Oakvale Farm near Port Stephens, who can no longer afford to insure children who want to ride Shetland ponies. It's a situation all operators say is out of hand. Costs are too high and they say there's only one solution.
I think the law has to be changed because there's an awful lot of, in the legal system that's earning a lot of money out of this and it's hurting society.
Helen Kapelos, NBN News.
Yeah, I rip curl again for 3 years, so that's a good confidence booster and makes me feel pretty set to go for the next 3 years.
Cold drinks were the order of the day after training today. Just Newcastle's second day back from the Christmas New Year break and temperatures weren't kind. Milan Blagojevic had his legs up for the last 2 games with a hamstring injury, but with the extended break, he can't wait to return.
It's definitely back to 100%. He's feeling really good. Like I said, throughout the trainings I haven't felt it all, so yeah, it's pretty positive.
Not so for Peter Sekenis. He strained a side stomach muscle and won't train again until next week.
Just in training yesterday in the afternoon, just went to turn and pulled up ever so sore in his side.
The midfielder still has 9 days to recover in time for United's first game for 3 weeks against the Melbourne Knights.
For me, they're close to probably the form side at the moment.
No one knows what form tennis star Goran Ivanisevic has with a soccer ball, but Melbourne is chasing the Wimbledon champ to play a match before his Australian Open commitments.
Just hope that it's like he serves, he gets them over the net and not into it.
I've heard the rumour and that. It's I don't know if that's a comical thing or whether it'd be an exciting thing to actually meet the man. So I don't know, I'm just looking forward to the game, obviously getting back into it.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. Most days of the week, Peter Morrow is either swimming, running or riding his way around in order to get into peak condition.
In a week I'd probably swim about 15k, cycle about 150k and run about 50k.
But the 20-year-old wouldn't have it any other way, nor can he afford to, with the state titles only weeks away. He finished second at the same championships last year, and with this his final season as a junior, he wants that #1 crown. To be raced at Orange on January 27, the Edgeworth Triathlete isn't bothered by a venue hasn't raced, rather the unknown competitors that continue to come out of the blue and surprise.
Nowadays you got athletes coming through like from nowhere, you've never heard of them and they're like in the top 3, like first race, and so you've really got to be on your game.
And to make sure he's on his, Peter's been training with leading hunter triathlete Boyd Conrick and swimming under the supervision of former Olympian Donna Proctor. But he knows it simply has to come together on the day.
I'm fairly close to them, but it's a sort of situation where one day they'll beat me, I'll beat them the other day. And at the state champs it happened to be my day, so I'm hoping I get another day like that.
For the past 2 days, residents of more than 60 homes and vineyards off Wallambai Road near Broke have been among those in the Upper Hunter preparing for a bushfire creeping their way.
Well, I'm particularly worried about the vineyard because we lost about 65% of it with a couple of hailstorms about a month ago.
Water bombing and backburning has removed any immediate danger, but a 30-kilometre fire front is tonight 12 kilometres southwest of Bulga, heading towards Howes Valley and Glenroy Estate. Firefighters are confident property will be protected. Meantime, firefighting authorities have defended a backburn that went terribly wrong yesterday, threatening a handful of homes at Fullerton Cove.
But we've got to make a call as to, is it more of a risk to put a backburn in, or is it a greater risk to have the fire come out from within the unburnt fuel? So whether the containment line was there, they were backburning or not, we figured would have spotted across.
With hot weather predicted for Sunday and Monday, there are renewed warnings.
I would ask people to not depend on the fire service being able to get to every house. I don't want to panic people. I mean, it's a normal response to this sort of conditions is make sure that your own houses are cleaned up, make sure the gutters are cleaned out.
Meantime, the police hunt for arsonists suspected of lighting the majority of blazes in the Hunter continues. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.